Nobody expected this rollout to suddenly start making sense, but here we are. Drake's Iceman situation looked dead in the water not long ago. Like he had no real plan, no clear direction, and no urgency. The vibe was basically, this album isn't coming anytime soon, and even if it does, what's the point? Then something shifted, and not in a smooth, confident way either. More like a weird, frantic pivot. The kind of pivot that happens when someone feels pressure, when someone gets uncomfortable, when someone starts realizing the room is laughing, the momentum is gone, and the old tricks aren't working the way they used to. Because now the conversation isn't just, when is Iceman dropping? It's why is Drake suddenly acting desperate? Industry voices, the ones people actually trust because they've been right before, are hinting that in just a matter of days, the confusion around this album is going to click into place. Like there's a missing puzzle piece about a drop, and once it does, the whole strategy is going to look a lot clearer. But the scary part is what that clarity seems to reveal. This isn't a normal rollout. This isn't Drake moving like a confident artist with something strong to say. This feels like Drake trying to distract people from the fact that he might not have the magic anymore, and he's trying to borrow it from someone else. And once you see who he's borrowing from, the whole Iceman era starts to look less like a new chapter and more like a carefully packaged hustle. By the time this is done, people might realize the album isn't the main story at all. The main story is who Drake is attaching himself to, and why it looks so calculated. And if that sounds dramatic, just wait, because the names involved make this way crazier. Before anything else, there's something that always comes with a Drake conversation: the chaos, the defensiveness, the how dare you criticize him energy. Drake fans, especially the ones who treat him like a religion, don't just disagree, they try to shut the whole conversation down. And that's exactly why any real discussion about Drake always feels like a fight. Because the moment someone points out patterns, real patterns, not random hate, there's a swarm that shows up to pretend none of it is real. Like the history doesn't exist. Like the strategy hasn't been obvious for years. Like the industry hasn't been watching the same playbook on repeat. So here's the real call. People need to stay aware. Not in a dramatic cancel him way. Not in a performative outrage way. In a simple, basic, common sense way. Don't get played. Don't let the rollout tricks hypnotize you. Don't let flashy visuals and carefully placed features convince you that something is original when it might actually be recycled. Because if this album rollout is truly what it looks like, then what's about to be pushed in everyone's face isn't just music. It's manipulation, a PR move, a smokescreen. And the reason it matters is because Drake has survived for so long doing one thing better than almost anyone else in rap: staying relevant no matter what the music actually sounds like. The question isn't whether he can make a moment. He always finds a moment. The question is, how is he making the moment this time? That's where Iceman starts getting suspicious. For years, there's been a specific narrative around Drake's longevity. People call it talent. People call it versatility. People call it genius. But the darker version, the one fans hate hearing, is that Drake has often stayed on top by attaching himself to what's already working. A younger artist catches fire. A new sound starts spreading. A new scene starts building its own wave. Drake shows up, taps in, borrows the energy, and suddenly it feels like he's part of that movement. Sometimes even the face of it. That's where the whole Drake stimulus package myth comes from. The idea that he blesses artists and upgrades their careers. But depending on how you look at it, it can also look like the opposite. It can look like he's using them. Because while the younger artist gets a temporary boost, Drake gets something far more valuable: access to youth culture. Access to what's trending. Access to whatever the new audience is excited about right now. And for a long time, that strategy worked. Until it didn't. There was a point where it seemed like the machine was running out of fuel. The people around Drake weren't winning. The new artists who were popping weren't really aligned with him. And the hottest momentum in hip-hop started drifting toward the other side of the culture, toward people Drake couldn't easily plug into, which made it look like Drake might finally be stuck. But then the alarms started flashing. Because Iceman isn't Drake being stuck, it's Drake building a new pipeline. And once you notice it, it becomes hard to unsee. The biggest sign that something changed came when people started connecting dots. Real dots, not fantasy theories. Suddenly, it became clear Drake wasn't moving alone with Iceman. He was positioning other artists around it, almost like they were supporting characters in a series. Like the album Rollout wasn't just Drake dropping singles. It was Drake using other people's releases as part of his rollout. And that's where the stealing accusation starts. Not stealing in the literal courtroom sense, more like taking songs, styles, vibes, and momentum. Taking what's fresh, what's buzzing, and turning it into a tool for his own comeback. And according to what's being said, Drake has now handpicked a new trio he believes can carry the next era for him. 3 names. 3 artists he thinks represent the future. 3 artists he thinks can bridge him into the next generation and make Iceman feel current, exciting, and unavoidable. Those names are Yeat SDk Kid and Central Cee. And the wild part is, this isn't framed as a rumor anymore. The evidence is starting to show up in public. Not in a hidden way either. In a loud, on-the-nose way. Because the rollout is happening right in front of people, most just haven't realized they're watching it. Here's where it starts getting almost comical. A new Yeat and SDk Kid collaboration drops. Made it on our own. And instead of feeling like a normal music release, it feels like a branded episode in the Iceman universe. Like a spin-off. And the visuals don't even try to hide what's going on. The video is filmed inside Drake's world. Drake's space. Drake's aesthetic. Drake's symbol of status. Drake lets them use his house, his embassy, as the entire setting. They're partying there, filming there, soaking in the energy of being inside his kingdom. And if you're watching closely, it doesn't feel like Drake is just being generous. It feels like Drake is investing. Like he's funding careers and pulling these artists closer because he needs what they have. And think about what that implies. If Drake is truly confident in his own new music, why is he building hype through other artists' releases? Why are other people's songs being positioned like trailer content for his album? It starts to feel like the rollout is being outsourced. And that's where the desperation theory starts sounding less like hate and more like strategy analysis. Because it's one thing to collaborate. It's another thing to use someone else's momentum as the foundation of your own comeback. And once that line gets crossed, it becomes very hard to believe this is all organic. As much as people clown Drake in the US right now, there's one thing that has always been true about him. He knows how to pivot. And this new pivot looks like a hard lean into the UK side. Central Cee and SDk Kid represent a completely different energy, different audiences, different trends, different cultural momentum. If Drake can slide into that lane convincingly, he can create the illusion of being new again. And from a cold strategy standpoint, that's smart, because the US rap conversation has been treating Drake like a joke more often lately. The culture feels less impressed. The newer wave doesn't look at him the same way they used to. Even when he drops, the reaction doesn't feel like automatic respect anymore. So what does someone like Drake do? He goes where the respect can still be manufactured. He goes where the audience isn't exhausted by him yet. He goes where his presence still feels like a big deal. That's why the UK push is interesting. It signals something deeper. Drake may be accepting that the US rap space isn't giving him what he wants anymore. And if that's true, then Iceman isn't just an album. It's a relocation. It's Drake shifting the center of gravity for his career. But he can't do it alone, which is why Central Cee becomes so important in this story. According to the talks circling around insiders, Iceman is closer than it seemed. That's the big shift. This thing might be about to arrive sooner than people expected, or at the very least we're about to get the next rollout piece, episode 4. And if the pattern holds, the next move feels predictable. If Central Cee was tied to one episode and Yeat was tied to another, then it would make sense for SDk Kid to be the spotlight for the next part. That could mean one major thing: a Drake and SDk Kid collaboration. A new single designed to hit both the US and the UK. Something big, something loud, something meant to shake the conversation and force everyone to pay attention again. That's the dream scenario Drake is probably aiming for. But the real question is whether the audience will buy it. Because even if the UK responds, the US might not. And if the US doesn't respond, the comeback narrative gets shaky. That's why this whole thing feels like a gamble. It's Drake trying to reverse age his image, like a Benjamin Button tactic, by attaching himself to youth culture again and pretending the clock isn't ticking. But if the rollout is already confusing his own fans, that's another red flag. Because an effective rollout doesn't require detective work from people who aren't even supporters. And if the people most aware of what's happening aren't Drake's fans, that suggests the rollout isn't landing the way it's supposed to. Which raises the biggest cliffhanger of all. If this is Drake's best plan, what happens if it still fails? At this point, every rap listener should do one simple thing: stay alert. Not because Drake is some evil mastermind, because this is just how the industry works when legacy artists try to hold on to relevance. They build moments. They manufacture narratives. They borrow shine. They create distractions. And when the album finally drops, a lot of people are going to pretend the rollout was genius no matter what the music sounds like. So the message is simple. Don't let that happen to you. If it's fire, give it credit. If it's mid, call it mid. If it's recycled, don't let the hype gaslight you into thinking it's original. And if the Iceman album really does land around March like the talk suggests, then people should brace themselves because the rap conversation is about to get loud, annoying, and non-stop. That's just how it goes when Drake enters the room. Now here's the real discussion. What does it say about Drake that he's recruiting this new trio to push his album forward? Is it smart strategy or blatant dependence? Is this a real evolution or just another trend chase? And most importantly, do you think it's actually going to work? If you made it this far, don't just dip out, drop your thoughts. Do you think Drake benefits from Yeat SDk Kid and Central Cee being tied into this Iceman era? Or do you think it exposes how little direction he really has? Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.